Amazing morning to each and every one of us, especially to our subject teacher, Mr. Steven Silagan. Sir, by the way, we are the reporters of Group 1. And today, we will be tackling about Chapter 4, Components of Special and Inclusive Education. In this chapter, the aim is to describe the components and processes involved in identifying children through assessment and providing varied means of support. So, here's our learning objectives. At the end of this chapter, you are expected to enumerate the process involved in child find through the pre-referral process, identify the assessment tools, methods, and principles in working with children with additional needs, identify the different placement within a continuum, compare accommodations and curriculum modifications, and lastly, identify ways how to involve parents as part of the homeschool collaboration. So, without further ado, let's start our discussion. Have you ever wondered how people with special needs learn? Do they have a learning environment? Is it still possible for them to develop? This confusion will be thrown away as we will learn about this matter. A comprehensive inclusive program for children with special needs has 5 following components, and I will be discussing the first component, which is child find. So what exactly child find is? Referral for evaluation and special education services begins by identifying students who have additional needs and who may be at risk for developmental disabilities. So, when we say referral, it is a formal request by a teacher on a parent that a student be evaluated for special education services. So here, school guidance counselors, early childhood teachers, primary school teachers, and even the community-based daycare workers are often the first one to notice such developmental delays in children. And also in other instances, the parents themselves know if their children are having developmental delays. Of course, they seek for consultation with pediatricians or other specialists. Child Find also has a process on how to effectively approach this concern. This may include a pre-referral process and B, pre-referral strategies. So, for pre-referral process, a child noted to have significant difficulties in relation to expected competences and developmental milestones may be referred by parents and teachers for observation and assessment. So here, pre-referral process is a preventive approach intended to address struggling students' academic or behavioral challenges in the classroom. Kapag nilaman ni teacher na yung students niya ay mayroong such developmental delays, they undergo pre-referral process. So we have here 4 stages of pre-referral process. The first stage is initial identification. Nakapaloob dito yung recognition of potential problems, parent or teacher's observation, review of school records and classroom observation. And then the second stage is determination of teaching areas and strategies. Nakapaloob dito yung small group instruction and direct instruction. And then the third stage, which is implementation of teaching programs, nakapaloob dito yung additional in-class or after-school support, modification of classroom environment and behavior, and also modification of instruction to address potential needs. And then the last stage, which is evaluation of teaching program, nakapaloob dito yung determine effectiveness of programs of learning and behavior. So here's the pre-referral process. While sa pre-referral strategies, essential in a pre-referral intervention is the use of pre-referral strategies that are designed to provide immediate instructional and behavior management support to a child. The pre-referral strategies are attempts to alleviate the problems so that a referral for further special education intervention may not be necessary. So, kapag yung bata ay may developmental delays, ina-undergo muna sila sa pre-referral pre-referral process and pre-referral strategies. Diba sabi nga dito, we have here the examples of strategies: observation of the child's behavior, interaction with parents, teachers, peers, interview of parents and teachers, review of school record, analysis of the child's academic output through error analysis, and then portfolio assessment. So, kapag nag-undergo sila sa pre-referral strategies, sabi ni Hayward 2013, using such strategies lessens number of cases referred for special education and makes efficient use time and financial resources that could have been spent for special education assessment. So instead na mulargo sila nga to sa special education, mas madayaw na undergo na sila sa pre-referral process o sa strategies. So, we have here the examples of Carl's pre-referral process. So, I will be reading this one. I will read this one. Miss Reyes, a third grade teacher, has always been baffled by one of her students, Carl. She has observed that Carl is very creative. He loves to draw and is quite good at it. He is fluent and conversant in English and can create such imaginative stories. She noted, however, that unlike his peers, who can already read short stories for grade 3 and write paragraphs as well, Carl is still struggling at the word level. So, may disability si Carl in terms of word level. Although he can create his own stories through oral narration, he can't seem to write them down without having spelling errors. He gets very frustrated in such tasks that when he needs to answer essay questions in a test, he just scribbles a word or two and stops trying altogether. So what Ms. Reyes did, together with the other subject teachers and the guidance counselor, they discussed Carl's behavior and performance in terms of his strength, needs, and strategies that have worked in the past. So, pinag-usapan nila. They have noted that giving him a list of high-frequency words and sight words has been helpful. So they suggested to pair him up with a classmate who is an able reader to help him during writing task. They had a meeting with his parents and informed them that he will be given supplementary reading and writing practice worksheets to be answered at home to build automaticity in reading. So, sinabihan na ni Ms. Reyes ang family ni Carl na ganyan merong disability si Carl in terms of word level. So, may referral na nagaganap. And finally, he was recommended to join an after-school English remedial class to address his reading and spelling difficulties. So, Ms. Reyes decided to refer Carl to the school's guidance team to determine reasons to account for his difficulties. The team advised Ms. Reyes on what she needed to do in the pre-referral process. So, binigyan ng advice si Ms. Reyes ng school's guidance team. Then, Ms. Reyes collected his sample works across subject areas, reviewed his report cards from the previous grade levels, and had a sit-down meeting with the rest of his teachers. Dito malalaman nila kung ma-address nila kung ano yung reason and then paano ma-address yung difficulties ni Carl para naman hindi si Carl ma-left behind sa academics. So, that would be the end of my topic. Ipagpapatuloy pa ng aking pangkat ang pag-uulat. Thank you for listening.
From now on, I will be tackling about what is the definition of assessment, what are the purposes of assessment, what are the methods of assessment, and last is what are the principles of assessment. For us to know, assessment is one of the strategies used by the teachers in teaching. Teachers use an assessment for us to able to determine or to examine the needs of the learners inside the classroom. Based on the definition provided in the book, assessment is the process of collecting information about child's strengths and needs. It uses a problem-solving process that involves a systematic collection as well as interpretation of data gathered. Alam naman natin na ang assessment o pagtataya sa wikang Filipino ay kasangkapan ng mga guro sa kanyang pagtuturo. Gamit ang pagtataya o o assessment sa wikang Ingles ay mas napapadali ng isang guro na matukoy ang kakulangan o meron bang natutuhan ang isang estudyante o mga mag-aaral sa kabuuan patungkol sa mga paksang itinuturo ng isang guro. Gamit ang pagtataya ay mas nabibigyang makabuluhan ang kanyang pagtuturo dahil nasa praang proseso ang kanyang pagsusuri. On the assessment purposes, the purpose of assessment is to gather relevant information about the student's performance or progress, or to determine the student's interest, or to make judgments about their learning processes. So, kumbaga, kahalagahan ng pagtataya ay para masuri ng isang guro kung mayroon bang pagbibigay importansya ang mga estudyante sa kanyang itinuturo hinggil sa mga paksang aralin na ibinigay ng isang guro sa kanyang mga estudyante. According to Gialni and Perindolo 2012, progress monitoring and evaluation of teaching programs and services are another purposes of which is to determine how effective the programs are to assess the inclusive teacher and the special education teacher. Let us always remember that assessment is an integral part of instruction as it determines whether or not the goals of the education are being met. Assessment affects decision about grades, placement, advancements, instructional needs, curriculum, and in another cases, just like funding. Let us move on the methods of assessment. In assessment, there are a variety of assessment methods that regular and special education teacher can use, and these are interviews, observations, checklists, or rating skills and tests. In tests, school psychologists, educational diagnosticians, and other related professionals use a variety of assessment tools to ensure the results are valid and reliable. And test is an example of an assessment that can ensure the validity and reliability of the result of the assessment. The test assessment can be conducted in two ways as follows. First, the norm-reference tests are standardized assessments that compare a child's performance with a representative sample of students of the same chronological age. Example of these are intelligence tests and achievement tests, while the second is the criterion reference test. Compare the child's performance based on the established standard and competencies and can be used to describe the student's performance. The norm-reference test is based on the intelligence test, while the criterion reference test is based on the performance on the learners. Informal assessment or non-standardized assessments are considered more authentic and thus can be used primarily to describe performance and inform instruction. Such assessments can be curriculum-based or performance-based, such as the teachers made instruments or instructions used in a classroom and in a portfolio assessments. The authentic assessment use a test, whether formal or informal, is only one method of assessments. There are other ways of assessing students considered at risk for developmental delays or have additional needs. One that is highly recommended by professionals is the use of authentic assessment methods and tools. So what does it mean about authentic assessment? Authentic assessment provides students the opportunity to apply knowledge and skills in a meaningful way, real-world setting rather than in an artificial and contrived setting. Assessment tasks that are more real-life is considered more authentic. An example of authentic assessment is observation of young students as they interact with family members, peers, and objects in natural occurring activities across setting. In observation, teachers and specialists use running records, which focuses on the occurrence of behaviors as they happen sequentially. If the teacher use a running records, there are essential information that must be included. First is the date and time of the observation. Second, names of children involved. Third, location of the incident. Fourth, verbatim recording or what children said. And last, actual events that occurred. There are another also records that can be used by the teacher. The anecdotal records. Anecdotal records contain shorter description of the incidents or anecdotes that teachers and specialists can use to analyze a students' behavior and plan strategies for specific child or group of children. Example of these are plate assessment and portfolio assessment. Now, these anecdotal records can be useful because you as a teacher, you are able to measure or you are able to examine the behavior of the learners based on the assessment of the anecdotal records. And last, let us talk about the assessment principles. Assessment practices should be anchored on principles as provided by the Division for Early Childhood of the Council for Exceptional Students or DIC in 2014. Child and family-centered practices a team-based approach application of individualized and appropriate process and use of genuine and meaningful communication that adhere to ethical and legal practices are recommendation provided by the DIC. Thus, a variety of assessment methods and tools use authentic measures as well as involvement of the family are necessary to make decision for placement and instructional planning. Meaning, the parents and the teachers must connect each other, must help each other for the development of the children or the learners. In assessment principles, there are three sets of principles provided. First is the educational. The process of assessment should help students learn or reinforce previous learning or both. Second, ethical. The process of assessment should be fair and transparent and must not discriminate according to the gender, sexual orientation, ethnicity, religion or belief, age or class, and disability. And last is for regulatory. The process of assessment should conform to university expectation as detailed in its regulations, policies, procedures, and guidance. And that would be the end of my discussion.
And now, let us discuss placement. Placement is a task usually given to a student entering an educational institution to determine specific knowledge or proficiency in various subjects for the purpose of assignment or to appropriate courses or classes. In other words, placement is a measurement to identify where the specific student belongs to. Let me share to you the three types of placement. We have emergency placement, primary placement, and respite placement. Emergency placement, it involves caring for children or young people who need somewhere safe to stay immediately, usually for a night or weeks. The second one is the primary placement. Primary placement involves looking after children or young people for a few months up to 2 years until difficulties at home are resolved or alternative plans are made for their future. Primary placement could also involve caring for children as well as young people until they reach 18 years of age. The third placement is the respite placement. It is caring for children or young people for short periods for their primary, foster, or kinship career. And now let us proceed to educational placement. Educational placement means the overall instructional setting in which the students receive his education, including the special education and related services provided. Educational placement include general education setting, special education placement, self-contained educational placement, and out-of-district placement. But before that, there is a question. or the common question, the popular question that are asked by some people. And this, what is the common placement for kids with learning disabilities? The answer is general education classroom, because most schools refer general education classroom as placement. Let us first discuss the general education setting. General education setting, it is where the student receive instruction from general or special education teacher, or may receive assistance from paraprofessional if designated in the EIP. General education, also known as inclusion class or mainstream placement, it is where students in a regular class with their grade level peers. In general education setting, the general and special education teacher will work together to develop accommodation and modification to provide the students access to the general education curriculum. The second one is special education placement. Special education placement, it is where students whose educational needs cannot be adequately met in the general education setting, so it will require specialized attention in a more controlled setting, which is this. In such case, a special education teacher works with a small group of students and utilizes instructional methods that will foster meaningful progress for those students. Students who are belong on special education placement complete grade level work in targeted subject areas in a setting. Let us proceed to self-contained educational placement. It is where the student is removed from the general education population for all academic subjects to work in a small controlled setting with a special education and teacher and paraprofessional. Students in a self-contained class work at various academic levels with different textbook and curricula, while some students continue to access some general education setting, example, lunchroom, recess, and special classes like art, music, and also library. Other students are 100% self-contained, meaning they are never or very rarely included in general education setting. Some self-contained educational placement require a student to go to a school outside neighborhood. The fourth one is the out-of-district placement. While self-contained educational placement requires students to go outside neighborhood, the out-of-district educational placement places a student in specialized school specifically designed to address targeted areas like specific disability, special types of learning needs, special behavioral or emotional needs, and some combination of these. Students of out-of-district placement typically has access to highly special educational programming in the presence of structure, routine, and consistency. However, similar to self-contained educational placement, generalization must be carefully considered and access to general population by the school can be limited or non-existent. And that's all for my part.
Hi, good day everyone. This is Shiela Mae Bohol, and today I will be discussing the part 4 of our topic, which is accommodations and curricular modifications. I will be discussing this part as brief and concise as I can, but of course, meron kayong matututunan. So without further ado, let's start. Students with disabilities and additional needs are studying in inclusive general education classroom may need accommodations in the form of instructional support and other supplementary services. Others who need more intensive support are provided with curricular modifications. So we have here letter A. Accommodations. So what is accommodations? When accommodations are provided in a general education classroom for children with disabilities, of course, yung mga barriers are removed from accessing education. From the word accommodate, you have to assess, serve, aid, or make a room for improvement so that children with disabilities can cope up with your lessons. So here are the examples. You can see that in your screen. So according to BEC 2010, accommodations may be provided both during assessment and instruction depending on the learning profile and needs of a child, and may vary in terms of presentation, response, setting, and scheduling. We will be discussing these 4 terms one by one. So first one is presentation, accommodation. So from the word presentation, you have to present, no? And referring on the table provided, we have here learning needs and examples of accommodation. Here in examples of accommodation, you can also use this one to aid what are the needs of your students. So, ingana na siya. Sa presentation accommodation, you just have to present formats na makatabang sa mga bata na may disabilities without altering the curriculum standards and competencies. Ikaw mismo na teacher, ikaw ang mag-adjust para makasabot ug makakope up ang mga bata na may disabilities sa waray disabilities. Dili ang bata mismo or ang curriculum ang mag-adjust para sa imo. You have to do your best. Then, ikaduha, okay, the second one is response accommodation. So response accommodation, it allows students with disabilities and additional needs a variety of ways to complete assignments, written tasks, performing tasks, and other activities. From the word response, you have to respond. No, you have to aid what are the needs of your students. So referring to the table provided, we have here the learning needs and examples of accommodations. So you can also use these examples to aid what are the needs of your students. So number 3, okay, setting accommodation. Setting accommodation from the word setting. It is about looking for a place or environment that is more conducive or comfortable na dili ma-distract ang mga bata. It is changes in the location or conditions of the educational setting or environmental may be necessary for students who need support in terms of behavior, attention, and organization of space and materials. Ingano siya, setting. It is all about the place. And the number 4 is scheduling accommodation. Okay, scheduling accommodations. So here in scheduling accommodation, you just have to schedule. From the word schedule, you have to set time or time allotment. You have to give a time allotment for your students for them to be able to manage of time, or you can also have a type of scheduling accommodation. So students with slower ability process information and directions, well as focusing issues may need these types of accommodations. So here are some examples of accommodation that can modify scheduling. No, we have here sending, providing visual schedule, providing an electronic device with alarms and cues. So please do remember the 4 accommodations, the PRSS. PRSS, presentation, response, setting, and scheduling. So that will be all. Hope you all have wonderful time listening to my discussion. At meron kayong natututunan, just keep on listening because ipagpapatuloy pa ito ng iba pa naming kasapi ng grupo. Thank you.
Let's proceed to modifications. Modification are instructional and assessment related decision made to accommodate a student's educational needs and consist of individualized learning goals and outcomes which are different than learning outcomes of a course or subject. So in other words, modification are changes in what students are expected to learn based on their individual abilities. Just like for example, modification include alternate books, a pass or no pass grading option, rewarded questions in simpler language, and daily feedback in a good way to the students. So by this, may improve yung kanilang learning development kung papaano mo mailapat ng maayos sa inyong pagtuturo. Then, curriculum modification provide for students with significant or severe disabilities where content expectations are altered and the performance outcomes are changed in relation to what are expected of typically developing student of the age of December 2017. So, dito, sa curriculum, dapat akma yung pagtuturo sa may disabilities or may special needs, because by this it will be guide them for his or her learning development. Then, when section assessment are modified, a student with the disability is still given a right access and the same learning opportunities as other students in general education class, but the tasks are more respectful and appropriate to the student's abilities and needs. So dito, dapat the same lang yung pagbibigay ng isang gawain at dapat appropriate na para mas mabilis sila makapagtutugon. Then, curricular modifications included changes of instructional level, content, and performance criteria, as well as the breadth, depth of content being learned by the students. Then, students with disabilities or the additional needs may be given more or less different content resources, materials together. And they may also be assessed using different standards that are more appropriate to the students' needs and abilities, such as being provided with fewer objectives, shorter lessons of smaller number of vocabulary words to learn. So dito, mas mainam na hindi mahaba yung kanilang pagtuturo. Kumbaga, dapat may panahon din sila makapaglaro sa kanilang kaklase o makipag-socialize. Then, let us have look Carl's learning profile does need accommodation or curricular modifications. That the text below present the learning supports Carl's receive context of his reading and spelling difficulties. So as you can see the text below, for me, both accommodation and curricular modification is really important because of the difficulties of Carl's. The teacher will need to change the instruction given in the class. On the other hand, Carl's also need to be accommodated despite of the difficulty that he has and still be able to join in the normal classroom setting. So that's it.
So our next topic is parent involvement. It has long been established that parent involvement in education, planning, and management of children with disabilities and additional needs is essential, as they are the primary caregivers and have direct influence on their children. Parent involvement is a combination of commitment and active participation on the part of the parents to the school and students. It builds positive relationship and encourages new behavior. Children with special educational needs deserves more parental support on their learning than ordinary children do. Homeschool communication. Having established the critical role of parents in a student's development and academic process and achievement, it is essential that there is a close home and school collaboration and communication. Students with special needs must have formalized daily or weekly communication through the use of homeschool communication. The more parents and teachers share relevant information with each other about students, the better help students achieve on his or her academic. So here are the types of homeschool communication. Number 1 is the parent-teacher conference. Parent-teacher conference are face-to-face meetings held between parents and teachers. Conducting such meetings is necessary so parents of students with disabilities and additional needs will be able to share about their child's background, strengths, abilities, etc. Parent-teacher conference give an opportunity to increase communication between home and school. This will be the main forum for teachers and parents. Parent-teacher conference helps teachers and parents communicate or discuss where the students' excellent are, and also to give ideas on how to improve the child or the student. This parent-teacher conference will be a long-lasting bond to help students achieve their goal. Number 2 is the written communication. Homeschool communication may also be conducted through written messages, such as the use of homeschool communication notebook, where teachers and parents write homework assignments, the students' behavior in the classroom, as well as progress on program goals. So written communication is a permanent product that requires careful consideration regarding format and content. The goal of this is to organize concise and accurate information so that the parents will read and understand well. This may be time consuming, but some parents prefer this form of collaboration as the messages are documented and they can provide copy to a developmental specialist when needed. Number three is the digital communication. A study found that parents and teachers perceive technology as an effective tool to promote involvement and thus value its use for communication, according to Olmsted 2013. Digital communication can help parents ask to the teacher in time and make them easier to reach out the teachers at a time that it is convenient. It will also help in time management, both teachers and parents. One of the best examples of this is the messenger. Teachers will hear the announcements, etc. about the students, and she or he can also provide pictures. And last, or the number four, the homeschool contracts. This will be an agreement of the teachers and parents in regards to the behavioral academic of the students, especially those students with disabilities. It is also a learning partnership between parents, students, and teachers of the rights and responsibilities.
Good day, everyone. So I am tasked to discuss about the other ways to involve parents. So parents and guardian in the special education decision making is very important. Parents and guardians have a more complete understanding of a child's physical, social, developmental, and family history. They are the one who have been and will be deeply involved throughout the child's school career. Parents may not be educators, but they bring their years of experience in others' profession and aspect of life to the process along with their experience with their own child. And since parents are one of the most important educators in children, there are two other ways that parents can also involve. So the first one is the parents' education. So guardians should strive to attend meetings to ensure participation in decision making and to provide input on all aspects of their children's education. So an example of parents' education are providing seminars to the parents and also workshop or training session. So this is to equip the parents to have a better understanding of their child's disability and accompanying strength, uniqueness, as well as specific techniques and strategies that they can practice at home, such as training session. Through this, parents will become educated in evidence-based approaches so that there will be a continuity and practices implemented between the home and the school. So the second one is parent support group. So parents are able to ask other parents about some tips and techniques on how they will be going to work with their children. It is very helpful since it includes planning and organizing. So through creating a support group, parents can draw support from one another during meetings as they share techniques and strategies on how they will be going or how they will be able to connect on their children in an easy way. So, this ends our discussion, and me and my group are very thankful for listening. Thank you, everyone.